another couple of minutes, ma'am. Let the participants join.
Okay. And last time it was only 1.5 hours, so I think we will do only 1.5 hours now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. By 2:10 we'll start, ma'am.
Sure. Okay.
Welcome you all for the afternoon session of day 1. Session 3 will be on Introduction to Data Analytics. It will be handled by Mrs. Usha Venkata Subramanian. I am happy to introduce our resource person, Mrs. Usha Venkata Subramanian, to the gathering. Mrs. Usha Venkata Subramanian currently heads the Data and Analytics Practice and Digital Solutions for Emerging Markets at L&T Infotech. She holds a master's degree from MIT Madras and started her career as a lecturer in computer engineering at IIT. She works in Middle East as a consultant, delivering data warehouse solutions for ministries of Kuwait and UAE. Now, with over 30 years of IT experience, she consults on areas like data on cloud, big data, data management, business intelligence, and IoT initiatives of global organizations in different sectors. She has collaborated with various partners such as Tableau, Swix, Informatica, Microsoft, IBM, and SAS. At L&T Infotech, she has set up data analytics practice for India, Middle East, and many other Asia Pacific countries. She leads various prestigious transformational programs of Digital India with government organizations. She has received the Women in L&T Infotech Leadership Award in 2017 for her contributions to business growth and strategies. I thank her for providing her gracious presence to join us today. And I invite our resource person, Mrs. Usha Venkata Subramanian, to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for that introduction. This is a good initiative by IFET. With the new national education policy, I think bringing the practical experience to the academics is very, very important. And I'm really happy that IFET is doing this kind of an initiative. So congratulations for that, Department of Computer Science of IFET. I will now share my screen and get into the presentation. I hope you are able to see my screen. So this topic is introduction.
Screen is not visible, ma'am.
Not visible. Please check now.
Yeah, now it's visible, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this topic is about introduction to data and analytics. As we know, day to day we are encountering various types of data in our real life. Specifically for people who are in the academics, you have data related to students, you have data related to courses, and like that, there could be many more things, even the facilities in your university or in your college, like that, there could be many more things about which you are having data about. Likewise, every industry that is functioning will have its own data. The whole idea is how do I use that data to make meaningful information and then help in the growth of the business. So that is where the data analytics comes into picture. Specifically on this topic, I have put up an agenda where I'll start with data-driven organization. What is a data-driven organization characteristics? And then we will go into different types of analytics that can be performed. Just for the sake of completeness, I have brought together certain definitions which may be useful. And of course, there is a lot of material out there in the internet. So some of that you can look through. So rather than keeping it more theoretical, the next section I will jump into practical examples of data analytics in various industries. So I have chosen those industries which are common in our real life. Like, many of us, all of us stay in a house. So real estate as an industry, we all understand pretty well. Either we have our own house or we are staying in a leased, rented building, whatever it is. So real estate is an area where we understand very much. Banking is another area that we all do various banking transactions. So by and large, we have a good understanding of it. Construction, we might have seen a few things getting constructed on the road or and so on. So I picked up that. Logistics is another business, because we all receive couriers and send couriers, and also that way, logistics as an industry, we track where our parcel is going on and so on and so forth. So that's also an area where we might be understanding. And then government, I have specifically picked up the example of income tax, because all of us have our income tax liabilities and we are paying our taxes. So I've picked up these 5 practical examples. And then to continue on the theory part of it, I have a topic on the architecture and best practices. So where I'm going to show something which is a reference architecture, and I'm also going to show a technical architecture which would be more practical. There are multiple architectural choices when it comes to real implementation. So throughout my each of my slides, there will be multiple examples that I will be talking about, and it will be good to notice them and note them down, because we want the future generation to come up, having adequate knowledge on various best practices that I'm going to talk about. And finally, I have one slide on, how are we doing data analytics at LTI. So that would be, that is where I would conclude. Overall, I'm planning this entire session to be 1 hour and 30 minutes. And as I understand, you can post your questions in the chat. And at the end, the moderator from IFET will ask those questions. So that's the mode of, conversation that we are going to have. With that background, I'm also going to switch off my video because it will take more bandwidth. Let's concentrate on the slides and the topic that I'm going to talk through. So the first and foremost, the topic around what is a data-driven organization, what are the key elements, right? Now coming back to our college example or a university example, you have data related to students, you have data related to courses, you have data related to classrooms and their locations or the buildings in your college premises. You will have data related to the library, the books available in the library, different categories of books and different, how many copies are there, what are the transactions, which student has borrowed the book, whether any students have borrowed books or not, or even staff who have borrowed books and they are going through content like that. There could be multiple such data available in an academic scenario. How do I build all of that together? Is there a correlation? A student who is studying, let's say, in the 3rd semester or a 5th semester, does he really have to look into a book on artificial intelligence, or can it come later? Or if he or she is studying right now, does it give an indication that this person is very enthusiastic and can take up any challenges? So that way, certain insights you may want to draw, and therefore having data as an enterprise asset and using that data becomes a very important activity. And having it in multiple places, right? Like library information system may be in the library, whereas course information system will be, probably with the administration section. So different departments having that data may or may not, give a validity of it. Therefore, how do I merge all of that and create that single source of truth is another, important thing that a data-driven organization should do. The data cataloging, which is nothing but the metadata associated with the data. Like for example, if somebody says marks, mark alone does not have enough meaning. It only talks about, the complete context. When you say, marks scored in third semester or fifth semester in so and so subject, only if you bring all that relevance, then it has a meaning. So the data has to be cataloged to bring that meaning. And once all of that is done, then your intelligence, the business intelligence, becomes a self-service BI. Or anybody who wants to ask a question, who wants to know more about the data, then it is easy for them to ask those questions and get that data. And then, different kinds of analytics. I want to ask a question around what will be the last year. This is the trend in which the students picked up various courses during the counseling time. Now this year, what will be the trend and all that. If you want to do those kind of analysis, then that analytics can be made possible as a service, which means, you could do an analytics API and make that analytics available to even authorities outside of the college. Like you may pass that analytics to the university, to the AICTE, or in the new scheme of things, it could be UGC. So, all of that you may be able to pass. And then when you do so, you will have to take care of a data governance, lineage, and traceability. Where did that data come from? How is it getting processed? And what is the end result? So this is what is meant by lineage. I know right from end to end of what is happening to that data. And then when I say governance, is the right person entering the data? Is the data going to the right person, or the information that is created, is it going to the right person? So that is where your traceability and the governance comes into picture. There is a lot about, data privacy that is being talked about. In fact, in Europe, they have a general data protection law, and, every company had to fulfill that law. Even in India, there is a file note that is getting created, and very soon it will also get implemented in terms of how organizations should hold the data of individuals in a very, very private manner. Of course, when we talk about all of these, we should talk about the findability of data. How can I easily search? I'm asking a question. Somebody says, what is the rank of IFET college among all the self-financing institutions? So if I ask this question, then directly the answer should come up right away. It should not say, it is after so-and-so college, or after, somebody else, and, that kind of information is not incorrect, insufficient, and therefore, there should be an easy way to find the data. And again, when you talk about data as a service, you are making it available to third parties, whoever wants to look at your data in the form of an API. And then the augmented analytics, which is, cognitive capabilities. As human beings, we have a perception of what is happening around us through our vision, through our hearing, and through our various senses, touch and all of that. So how can I enrich the data in order to get all this kind of, cognitive capabilities also imbibed into the data? Like, there could be a lot of data coming from images, there could be a lot of data coming from audio files, and so on and so forth. So all of that, how do I bring that into the same enterprise data asset? And I need to do all of this with the speed, right? So it can't be, I'll take 3 years to develop a system which can do an image processing and find out. It has to be done very, very quickly. So how do I exhibit that agility? How do I bring in areas like DevOps for the delivery purposes? So if you look at it, this entire gamut talks about various areas where the data-driven organization is heading towards. I have deliberately left out one of the point, which is monetization of data. It is on the top right corner. When you plot any chart or any graph, the most important item will stay on the top right. So same is the case here. I have a lot of data. I'm able to create information out of the data. I'm able to create insights out of this data. Can I increase the revenue of my company using those insights, right? Can it be actionable so that I can generate more revenue for my company? So that means I'm monetizing the data, or I'm using that data to make more money for my company. Or in other cases, I have a lot of data, I have information, I have insights, and using that, can I control the cost that is incurred in operating in operations? And as a result of that cost control, there is money that is saved for my company. So then also it becomes a monetization. So in both the cases, whether it is a revenue or it is a savings, both of these, if I'm using data to do any of these, then it is called as a monetization of data. And finally, money is all, about doing business. So that's where it squarely fits in a clean, in a advanced, data driven organization scheme. Now, having said that, I talked a lot about data. Now, what all ways in which I can present or provide the data to different decision makers. So that is where there are different types of analytics that we need to talk about. So if you look at this picture, in the bottom, we have data. Data then gets converted to information, and from the information, we may gain some knowledge. And after that knowledge, there will be insights and recommended actions. So different levels at which data gets transformed to actions, right? So it becomes a actionable data, right? So these are different levels. Now, what happens in terms of the types of analytics? So suppose if somebody asks what happened, how many students joined IFET college in computer engineering department last year? If that is a simple question, it is just what happened. All that we need to do is look up the number of students who joined, and maybe you can also analyze whether they joined from which parts of the state. That kind of analysis can be done, which is using all your data. So what you have done is only you've converted that data to a information, right? The second level is that, which is diagnostic. Okay. So you are finding that out of 100 seats, there are only 80 seats that have got filled up. Then you want to analyze, why did it happen? Why only 80 seats? Why not those 20 seats? Is it a problem with the infrastructure? Is it a problem with the faculty? Is it problem with the students themselves who are not adequate students in and around this region? So multiple analysis would happen, and then you would come into a layer of diagnostics. And the third level would be, predictive. Okay, I take some corrective actions. I have the knowledge of why certain things happened, and therefore I take certain corrective actions. I get some new faculty, I get some industry academia consortium. Then can I predict that more students will come and join next year? So that is the level of predictivity where you are using the analytical insights. And finally, there is this the layer of prescriptive, where you're saying, what should I do? Okay. So in that layer, you're saying that, either you give a recommendation that, you do in this way, you provide some inputs for the decision, or you automate the decision also. So either it can be decision support, or it can be, automatically you increase the number of seats or reduce the number of seats, do something about it, right? So this is how layers of different types of analytics are carried out. Now, if you look at the colors, so there is certain thing which happens in black, which is all analytics, which is all coming from the various programming and the BI technologies, whatever we're using. And then there is a portion of the human input. So in the descriptive layer, while you get only certain information, but then in order to convert that into action, you have to do a lot of things on the human area. And as you go up in this layers, you see that the highest level of analytics would be a prescriptive analytics, where it can take you right through into the actions or automating the actions. And therefore, the business value also goes up as you do better and better types of analytics, from the low end analytics to the high end analytics. So with that background, let me move on to certain what you call as definitions, right? The first slide, which I talked about as a data-driven organization, I was talking a lot about data. So I have one slide which talks about the definitions of what is the core to become a data-driven organization, or in other words, a data repository. So you just understand the word repository as a place where you store data, right? Now, there are two types of data storage that is generally talked about in the industry. One is a data warehouse, which is defined as an enterprise-wide integrated repository of data, right? So I'd like to break this sentence into 2-3 parts. Number one, it is enterprise-wide integrated. What does this mean? It means that if you have course data, if you have students data, you have library data, you have buildings data, you have laboratory data, you have all kinds of data within your college, and then you are bringing all of that together into one single place, then it becomes an enterprise-wide integrated repository, right? Number one. Number two, you're looking at subject orientation, right? Or subject oriented. So you've brought all the data together. Now you want to look at, the student as a subject area, right? I want to analyze different facets of a student. What kind of courses the student is opting wherever there is elective subjects, what kind of library books he or she is consuming, what kind of lab, other than the regular lab hours, is the student really using the lab beyond and after? Is the student actively going and taking some external courses and getting certified? Like that, there could be multiple things that you are analyzing about a student. So student becomes a subject area. Or you may study, do a lot of analysis or combine the data around courses and keep them together in one place. So that's why it is classified by subject areas. Third is the time variant. Now, what happened yesterday or day before, last year, previous to previous year, in the last 10 years, if you're keeping that entire history, right? So that is where you will know the comparison of over the years, what is the trend and all that. So that is possible only when you keep all the history together, and data warehouse is a place where you keep all that kind of history. And the last but not the least is that the data is non-volatile. That means nobody will delete that data. It will stay forever in the data warehouse. And whenever this kind of analysis has to happen, this analysis will be used for taking actions or for the decision support that we talked about in the previous slide. Now, there is another definition that has come up in the last 5 to 7 years, which is a concept called as data lake. Please understand, both data warehouse, data lake, both are concepts, right? And physically implementing them might differ in a slight ways, but then, both are theoretical concepts, right? Now, data lake is a concept where you're bringing the data as it is, near exact or even exact copy of the source format, and then storing it in your, in a large storage area, which is called as a data lake. So it is a centralized repository that allows you to store all your data. And remember, this is both structured data and unstructured data also. Now, why is there a lot of emphasis on data lakes? Because if you see in a data warehouse, you may be constrained to hold only structured data, whereas in a data lake, you will be able to hold unstructured data also, which means, you'll be able to store images, you'll be able to store audio files, and so on, which also have meaning, which also have data into it, right? In terms of the comparison of these two terms, data lake, data warehouse, both are both are interchangeably used, and they are not in. I mean, they will be storing large volumes of data. Data lake will be having a lot of raw data, which then gets refined, and it may go into a data warehouse for structured analysis that needs to be carried out after that. But if there is some quick experimentation that needs to be done, we can still use that from the data lake itself. Okay. The other set of definitions that I have is on the analytics, right? So we talked about data-driven organization. Then we talked about data analytics. So on the analytics front, the first and foremost definition is the data analytics itself. This means that you're converting data to information, right? It is the science of analyzing that raw data. So we were talking about data warehouse, data lake. So I bring all the types of data into one single place, and then I want to analyze. I may be doing just descriptive analysis, or I may be doing predictive analytics or prescriptive analytics or diagnostics. So I can do any of these, but then I'll have to make conclusions about that information, right? So that is where many techniques and processes have evolved, and then it automates the whole thing together. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah, sorry about that. So I was talking about, there are a lot of techniques and processes which will help to convert that data into insights and then actionables. So there is a lot of emphasis in the industry on automation, on developing algorithms that will convert this raw data into a format in which it becomes ready for human consumption. In other words, data analytics is the management of all the data that you have received. It could be operational data. Sometimes you have already processed the data and made it analytical. So I bring all of that together, use all of that together, analyze that, and drive business processes and improve the business outcomes. So that is key for the data analytics. So there is one more key term that you might hear in this context, which is self-service analytics. Now, we have been talking about data for the last, 15-20 minutes. What is then, what is the self-service analytics all about, right? So when there is a data available in some repository, if I'm able to take that data, perform my own queries, generate my own reports without any support or with very less support from the IT department, then what I'm achieving is a self-service capability. Right. So if your principal calls you for a meeting and then you're going prepared with a lot of data, you might be doing some crunching of that data using Excel, using Access and all of that. But if you have a common system where this can be easily picked up by those kind of decision makers themselves, then it becomes a self-service analytics case. So with that, I'm switching over to the next section, which is on the practical examples. So there will be 5 different industries in which I want to quote certain practical examples, as I explained in the beginning. We'll start with the real estate as an industry, right? So what I'm depicting here is the complete value chain of how data goes through multiple layers and then it becomes insights for the consumers to consume that data. Okay. So on the left-hand side, there are different types of data providers. There are internal data providers, which is, it could be a sales data where you have data about, to whom the property has been sold, to what type of, what is the value of that transaction, what is the, tenure, if at all there is a leasing, you would get to know what kind of tenure for which the building is leased. And if there are certain additional services, like, for example, the builder is providing certain park and other kind of, around the apartment, certain services and all. So what kind of asset services? And how do you compare with respect to the market, right? What are the other competitors? What are the other builders providing versus what are we providing? So there is quite a lot of internal data that is there, which is available for these real estate companies. In addition to that, they may also go and buy certain third-party data, like, guideline values in a particular area and so on and so forth. So that becomes your external data. So all this kind of data providers are there, from which, different types of data comes in. So when you talk about types of data, there is different ways in which you can classify the types of data. You could look at master data, which is, the customer data. Could be the occupiers who are occupying a leased building, or it could be tenants where there is a rental building. Then there could be owners and landlords who own the building, or who own the entire, the plot also. Investors and developers, which is nothing but the builders and all. So these things are all would all become your master data. Similarly, asset data would be about the buildings and lands and all of that. Right? On the other hand, if you're talking about occupancy, the lease expiry, etc., what are the various transactions? So then it becomes your transaction data. And there could be, various surveys and research that gets carried on. So those things are your external data. Now, what do? What you do is, you take all this data and you aggregate it. So you bring them to a common platform, and you may, you don't want to look at each and every individual transaction, but you want to look at a gross level over a period of time, what has happened, or in a particular geography, what has happened. So various kinds of aggregations have to happen as one of the operations. Then you may do certain comparisons, like, what is the nature of the data in one place versus the other. So there are certain comparisons that you need to do. And based on that, you may do certain predictions, right? So this is what will be the trend. Or if you price it in this way, your sales will become better. Or if you add on certain asset services, your sales could be better. Such kind of predictions. And then simulation. So simulation is what if I provide some kind of a discounts, will my sales go up? So those are all simulations where you are trying with different options. Now, as a result of all these operations, all these analysis, you get insights. The insights could be different trend reports, which talks about the growth trends. It could be market share reports. It could be specific to certain deals, or specific to certain geographies. And finally, who is the consumer of these insights? It is either the internal clients or the external clients. What do we mean by internal clients? So internal clients are those who are in the management, who are in the decision-making line, who actually look at these trend reports, who look at all these kind of different, reports, and they take decisions. Whereas external clients are people like any of us who want to take a decision on whether to go for this particular property or not, that kind of decisions. Now, this is how typically it happens in any kind of industry. There'll be different layers of data providers, different types of data, different types of analysis, and then you get insights. And finally, those insights are made available to the consumers, typically in a self-service capability. Let's see how will the dashboard look like in the case of the customer analytics, right? So one specific example that I have taken from the real estate industry. So by looking at all type of customers who are there, there could be customers who are transacting with this company. So that is where they are classified by their gender, they are classified by their age group. So one thing which is noticeable here is this big stretch of number of male members. So 40% of the male members in the age group of 36 to 50 are actually coming and transacting with this real estate company. As compared to that, only 34% of females are transacting in the same age bracket. So that kind of comparison comes right away upfront in front of our eyes with this kind of a visualization. The other things that get analyzed is also, whether there are buyers who are single, who are married, and could be having other marital statuses. So that bifurcation also helps us to understand the customer profile in a better manner. So similarly, whether more number of graduates are purchasing from this real estate company, or what kind of education background do they have. So when they get all these kind of details, what happens is that, there is also an important parameter called as the customer churn. Will the customer come back and do some repeat business with us, right? So that is the analysis. And for doing that, you could do based on the past data, or you could also do what if, right? So I have here, these are all the various filters that have been applied on the data. And what I'm actually looking at is, all the male members who are married, because that is where we saw that majority of the procurements are happening. And then based on that, when I filter, I see that there is a 85% where there is no churning will happen, but then there is a possibility that 15% could possibly churn out. So how do I retain those customers? So that is where there will be an effort by this real estate company to ensure that there is no much of customer churn. Now, if you look at this from a visualization angle, right? So that what I explained right now is the business meaning. Now, if you look at the business, the visualization aspects, this chart or this dashboard contains various KPIs and represented in different formats. So there are bar charts, vertical, horizontal bars. There are pie charts and different color combinations, and very neatly laid out that you're not overcrowding the information, but all the required information is laid out in a very pleasing manner, in an aesthetic manner, so that it gets consumed or whoever looks at it finds it very intuitive to understand what is going on, right? And just to let you know, this dashboard has been developed using a BI technology called as MicroStrategy. So in each of these slides, I will have different such technologies. I'll introduce you to different such visualization widgets, and at the end, we will summarize what will be the best practice as well. Moving to the next example, which is in the case of a banking, right? Now, as you all might be aware, most of the banks are divided into different zones. So there is a north, south, east, and west zones that are there. And what is important for the banks is, so when you do a banking transaction, right? Anybody who is just having a savings account or that kind of account, the bank may not find that person very, very profitable. In fact, they have to give interest, whatever the small amount of interest. Some interest has to be given to people who are just having savings account. But in case of loans, right, loans or credit cards, there is an interest that the bank is charging on us. Therefore, those are the products which are really profitable to the banks, right? So there will be a lot of analysis that gets done in the bank in terms of those kind of products, whether it is a personal loan, home loan, car loan, or credit cards. These are all the various things that will really get analyzed a lot. Then the second thing is, even the products like, fixed deposit and all, which will actually help in increasing the liabilities of the product. Because, when you have a fixed deposit, the liquidity of the bank increases, and therefore, they will be able to, they have this deposit mobilization month, and, those kind of attempts are made, or marketing attempts are made by the banks. So going by that, the manager at the top may want to analyze how their different zones are doing, the north, south, east, and west. So there is a comparison that happens. And then also the average profitability or the budget to actuals, like that, multiple comparisons by product and all happens at a top level. And therefore, if you notice the screen, there is a username. So this user who is logging in, their name or their details will be displayed here, which means you are able to you are able to log in with the different login credentials. There is a user authorization and authentication whenever you use these kind of applications. And because of that, you are able to see only what data is relevant to you. So if there is a zonal manager who belongs to the South zone, when he logs in, he will not be able to see the comparison of other zones because that may not be relevant to him. Again, it depends on the transparency with which the bank is operating, but nevertheless, the South Zone manager will be interested in knowing what are his sub-regions are doing, how are his branches doing. So therefore, details will change according to the branches and so on and so forth. When the drill down happens to the branch level manager may be interested in knowing the top 3 and the bottom 3 customers. So particularly he may be wanting to know more and more about these top 3 customers because he can go and check with them for other type of products and to cross sell more and more newer products and make more profit out of it. Whereas bottom 3 customers, he will try and he's okay even if they churn out and then still they can bring in other customers into the bank operation. So that is why these are all important kind of analysis when it comes to the profitability analysis from a business standpoint. Now, if you notice this kind of dials, this is like a car dial. If you notice, these dials are typically used when you have a threshold value and you want to compare against that threshold value. So the North Zone has a threshold value of 122 lakhs, as against up to that point in time, they had made only 50 lakhs or so, right? Sorry, 50,000 or so. So this kind of comparison helps to know where we are with respect to the overall target, and based on that, you will be able to decide what other steps has to take place in order to move the needle on the dial. Now this donut, the donut or a pie chart is typically used for comparing different regions. So, and most of the situation, it is a percentage. So when you total up all of that, it becomes your 100% of the operations. In terms of the products, again, you are comparing because if at all there has to be impetus given to be given to a particular product, you could decide which ones to go after, right? And as you can see, different controls or different widgets have been used in this representation. And for those who are at a branch level, they may want to see at a very, very detailed level, and therefore there is also tabular reports that can be embedded on a dashboard. This dashboard has been developed using Power BI, which is a Microsoft tool. And if you see the look and feel, the aesthetics of the screen, this is also pretty neatly laid out and very intuitive for anybody to understand. The only thing that we need to know is how does the business operate, right? Moving to the third example, this is on the construction. So you might have seen large construction sites where there are, huge cranes that are kept, tower cranes. There will be huge deep excavators that are digging really deep into the ground and so on and so forth. And these are all, very, very heavy equipment. This is about, how do I get the data directly from the equipment itself? So in other words, there is a IoT sensors that have been fixed on the equipment, which will give information regarding, whether the engine is on or off, whether the equipment is reporting or not reporting, how many hours it has worked based on the engine on-off conditions, and how much fuel it has consumed. So all these are coming from the sensor data, and based on the sensor data, there are certain operational decisions that take place. Now, first and foremost is the asset tracking itself. Now, in which project site or where is that equipment deployed? So that is where you are seeing it in a map widget, specific assets that are deployed in different locations. Other than that, you are also able to compare the working hours versus fuel consumption. So the idea is that if the machine is really good, then with the appropriate consumption of fuel, it will produce the required required amount of work. But if the machine has become older or if it has to undergo certain service, then even though it is working for more hours and even though it is consuming more fuel, it may not have produced the required output. So that is what this chart is showing. This is called as a bubble chart. Now, if you look at the various parameters, so there is an x-axis which shows the fuel consumption. So this one has consumed more fuel because it is further more on the x-axis, and all these equipment which are here have consumed less fuel. And in terms of the working hours, this one has worked for 6 hours, whereas the other equipments and all are working for lesser number of hours. So two meanings we have already got. Now there is also a third meaning or another two more meanings that are there. One is the color, right? So if you look at these bubbles, these bubbles are red color and certain bubbles are green in color. The red color means that your efficiency of that particular equipment is not good. Whereas if you look at the green color, it gives a better efficiency. So the color notifies another parameter. And then the size of the bubble also. So the size of the bubble is how bad is the situation or how good is the situation. So that is also an indicator that you get out of this kind of a chart. In addition to that, you would whatever other things that you are seeing here are all just simple, text widgets where you can flash certain important KPIs only in the form of those numbers. You don't need a bar chart, you don't need a pie chart, you don't need any other type of representation. It is just simple that number which we are looking at. This kind of this dashboard again is prepared using Power BI. And if you notice, there are two more widgets that I have introduced in this example. One is a map widget and the other one is a bubble chart. So, and so this is how it happens in the industry. And there are certain inferences that also can be shown in the form of text items, which is also embedded on a single dashboard. Here is an example where it is about equipment productivity in the logistics. So this particular company takes minerals mined at a mining site to the place where it is to the seaport, from where the minerals will go as an export. So on a day-to-day basis, the operations manager or the logistics manager wants to see how much what is happening and in terms of the equipment productivity. So we are looking at a specific equipment called as a grabber, and this is a make of that equipment, Cinnabogan, right? So from a classification perspective, the asset ID and asset type, these are all coming up as filters, which means on the same dashboard, if I want to analyze another asset, right? If I have A004, I will be able to analyze that asset, or any number of such grabbers are there, I will be able to analyze all of them. So you have filter controls by which you can filter what you are going to analyze. The other thing is, if you remember, when I was talking about data warehouse, I was talking about time variant. So over a period of time, the usage may be varying. So that is where here there is a date slider. So this slider will allow me to slide on a particular date and look at what was the scenario on a particular date. So that helps in analyzing at different points in time. And then if you look at the middle portion, you are able to see multiple horizontal bar charts have been represented. So if you look at the grabber itself, right, how many days it has been operational in month-on-month basis. So two things you are able to compare. One is that, in the month of August, it has worked for 14 days here, and then 12 days here. So that means, it has worked for 26 days. Whereas, in the month of July, there's some error in this data. So in the month of July, it is showing 20 plus 20, 40 days. So obviously there is some mistake in the data. You can go back and question the operational manager why there is a discrepancy in the data itself. The other thing that you are looking at is, in terms of the percentage of operational time frame. So you want to operate at 100%. Of course, those are machines, they will require downtime for maintenance. So if you leave out those downtime for maintenance, is it operating the entire available hours or not? So that is also a metric by which, the operations cost can be saved and managed in a better manner. So like that, if you see in each of them is a key performance indicator, or in other words, KPI. So dashboards are typically used for depicting various KPIs, which will help in taking business decisions, which will help in improving your business operations or your business growth in a better manner. You also see that in the bottom, there are a few other things that are depicted. This representation is showing how many metric tons or what is the quantity of load that is handled by the grabber day-wise. So on certain days, it is handling more load, certain days it has handled less load. There are line charts, and then there is the area chart also. Bar charts and a line chart plotted on top of them. So this gives a sense of how the movement has happened over the days, and if there is a very, very low usage on a specific day, then you can analyze why it was low. Was it because there was not enough mineral to be carried or grabbed, or was it because the grabber had a problem on that day and it had to be maintained? So that kind of conclusions or decisions can be taken on the maintenance of the grabber also. So if you look at this entire dashboard, this has been developed using Tableau, the subject that you're going to study in the remaining days. And then again, this is well laid out, very with nice colors and, in a well structured manner. So at one glance, you are able to see many KPIs and you get the required information that is that you need to take decisions, or the manager has to take decisions for their operations. The last example is on the income tax or the Digital India initiatives. Now, if you look at any of us, we will be spending our income in multiple places. For example, here is an entity, here is a person with a PAN card number, so and so. This person has gone and purchased some jewelry in a jewelry shop. Okay, so you're giving your PAN number there. So that is one piece of information. The same person probably has also gone on a tour. Of course, we are talking of a pre-COVID situation. This person has also traveled for a tour, and therefore the tour operator gives the mobile number and provides a report to the income tax department. Third is this person comes and stays in a very luxury hotel, and again, given another mobile number. But when all of this gets collated, what happens is in the income tax department, since there is data available about the contact number and alternate mobile number, all of these details are available with the income tax department. So the information gets linked together, and as a result of that linkage, the comparison of the tax liability versus what this person has actually paid, right? So that comparison happens, and if there is an underreporting of the income, that is caught immediately, and as a result, the scrutiny officer or the income tax department sends out a SMS saying, please check your tax payment, or they say that there is a discrepancy in the tax amount paid by you. So such things play a very, very critical role in the Digital India initiatives, and we are working towards achieving a lot of automation, a lot of information processing and analytics associated with it. A specific dashboard example here where we have used a map interface. So this is a GIS dashboard. GIS stands for Geographic Information System, a GIS dashboard. So in this dashboard, what you can see is the map of Uttar Pradesh, and the various the various taxpayers are plotted here as the location icons. And you can see that there are certain icons which are shown as yellow, which means, they have not paid. It's an alert that, there is something wrong with the tax payment that they have made. Now, specifically, there is one place which is shown in red. That is because the cluster of the number of taxpayers in this place is very, very high. So this area is highlighted, and quite a number of warnings or quite a number of alerts are there in this particular zone of the income taxpayers. So what has happened is their electricity payment or the power consumption, which is shown in another color, that is combined with the income tax payment that they are doing. So a person who is paying higher electricity charges, or a company that is paying higher electricity charges, is likely to also have higher income, and therefore, if they are not reporting correctly, then there is a problem. So both defaulting or not paying taxes or underreporting, all of that will come into picture through this geographical map kind of widgets as well. And if you notice, this GIS dashboard also has filters and various other controls by which you can analyze specific data. And there is a pop-up which comes as a tooltip in case you want to know a little more data about a particular consumer itself. So that way, if you notice, this is built using a technology called as ESRI, ESRI. And then in the backend it goes and integrates data from a database. So if you notice, I have been talking about different technologies. There is a MicroStrategy that I mentioned. There is Power BI, there is Tableau, there is Click, another BI tool, and then this one is ESRI, which is specifically a GIS visualization tool. So different visualization tools are there in the market, and customers may choose, more or less their capabilities are similar, and customers may choose one or the other for visualizing their data and information. And based on that, the decision making happens. And in some places, it is a decision making, using the data and the information. Sometimes it can even be a decision automation, which means all this red alert automatically, you send out the SMSs or the messages. So that kind of an integration is also possible. So with that, I come to the end of the second section, which is on the practical examples. Let me move to the third topic, which is again, going to be how is the back end looking like. So after talking about the theory of what is a data-driven organization and the analytics, all these practical examples that we saw were all about, what happens in that value chain and how the user will experience it, the user experience layer of it. Now we have to see how you will construct that kind of a platform. So that is where the architecture comes into play. So any data architecture will be as per this kind of or similar to this reference architecture, which is published by TDWI, the Data Warehousing Institute. TDWI stands for the Data Warehousing Institute. So we did talk about different types of data. So there is a lot of traditional data, which could be your financial data, your billing data, your operations data, and so on, which will be residing in CRM, in ERP systems and all that. So all of that is your traditional data. But then of late, we are getting data directly from machines. So remember, I was talking about the grabber as an example, or I was talking about, the construction site where the machines are there and they are sending data from their IoT sensors. So all that is your machine data. There could be data coming from your mobile also, like, your GPS, where you are right now and so on, or, whatever you're keying into your mobile, that could also potentially come in as and when you're doing those actions. And there could be data available in the web data, meaning some news articles and things like that, or social media. So all these different types of data are there. And when that data is available, you have to ingest that data. So when you talk about ingestion or ingestion of data, you will first bring that data into a landing area and stage it, meaning it will be held for a limited period of time. When you are checking whether the data is valid, not valid, whether it is complete, not complete. So there are certain basic checks that get carried out in the data staging activity. And then the data gets processed. So we talked about, aggregating the data, comparing the data and all that. So that is where you have the ETL, extract, transform and load, or ELT, extract, load and transform. Processing happens. And as a result, you may have a pre-prepared data, which will actually go into the data lake. So typically in the data lake also, you want to store the raw data, but then you have to also store as much as possible good quality data. So that is where there is an amount of cleaning of data that happens. Streaming data would come through Kafka kind of technologies, where you have web data or you have a social media data which is continuously streaming, and then you bring it into the storage layer, into the data lake. Complex event processing is, let's say in the banking example, somebody is doing a banking transaction at an ATM. Then and there, the event has occurred, then and there the data has to come in. So that is where your complex event processing comes in. All this data comes into the data lake, and there could be some kind of algorithmic analytics that are pre-built and kept in the data lake itself for quickly, giving it to the end consumer. Or data can be reorganized in terms of departmental data domains or so. So there is certain level of organization of the data that happens in the data lake. Then when it comes to the next layer, so this is where your core data warehouse could potentially get built, where you define the data according to the subject areas, define the metrics, the KPIs that I talked about, and prepare the data for the reports and dashboards. So that those all actions happen in the core data warehouse. There could also be certain specialized DBMS like columnar DB or graph DB. Like, if you look at Facebook, or if you look at LinkedIn, there is a friend and then there is a friend of friend. So typically you have to represent friend of friend and those kind of relationships in a graph database. That will be a better method of storing it. So all those kind of specialized DBMS exist, and specialized analytics can be performed. Across the system, you will have to have a data integration mechanism. You'll have to build certain user interfaces, or you have to build interfaces across systems. You have to catalog the data, or in other words, keep the metadata of this data. There could be different predefined queries that have been built, and data can be virtualized, which means you have data in 2-3 places and you bring them all without actually moving the data. You virtualize, put one layer on top of it, and that will make the end user experience seamless. So all these are different technologies that will typically be present in a data warehouse system. Where will it be implemented? It can be implemented on the web itself, on a web portal, using client server technologies and clusters and racks and grids. These kind of combinations it can be done, or it can also be on the cloud, where you have actually moved the data to the cloud and then your BI gets consumed from the cloud. So all these kind of combinations are possible when you implement a data warehouse or a data lake for doing the analytics. Here is a technical architecture. The example is of that of a banking system. So there could be data coming from your core banking. There could be data coming from treasury. There could be data coming from cards and the verification systems and so on. So multiple internal and external sources from which data is coming in. Data can arrive to the acquisition layer or the ingestion layer in the form of batch, or can be processed in a batch, or it could be, through data APIs you consume as and when the data is available. And then once it is acquired, it goes to a raw data layer. And between the raw data layer, there is a data quality check that happens, and then that data becomes your processed data. After that, data goes through certain integration activities, and then the analytical layer gets filled up. Now, once the data is available in the analytical layer, you can make that data itself available to the business users or third party as a data as a service, or you can even make analytics as a service. So through APIfication. So this is the layer of APIfication. Now beyond that comes the consumption layer where you may use various tools. So in this particular example, Power BI was used as the BI tool. It could be Tableau, it could be MicroStrategy, it could be Qlik, any kind of BI tool that we may talk about. And then reports and whatever the output can go into downstream applications. Data can be passed on to the regulator. So in your case, when you are preparing reports for AICTE, so then that goes to the regulator. You could do campaign management using that data. Remember, we talked about customers who are likely to churn out and all. So you want to retain the customers, so you would potentially do certain campaigns for that, and then you could also exchange data with external business partners and agencies. So the crux of the matter here is that analytics is closer to the business users, whereas data is more of a back-end activity that happens. So therefore, it is very important to know the data lineage, and all through this layers of processing, you'll have to audit. You'll have to know who has entered the data, how it has been calculated, what is the result of that calculation. So complete audit should be there, balances and controls. And likewise, the security should also be kept intact all through, because you don't want to lose the data. You don't want to reveal certain data to people who are not supposed to see it. Last but not the least, there is also an archival layer, which means when the data volume becomes too huge and at a point where it does not make any meaning to the business, you could archive that data in another layer and keep it for on need basis usage also. Right, so this is how a technical architecture would look. So it is merely a translation of what we saw as a theoretical or a reference architecture by TDWI, the Data Warehousing Institute. This is more practical, and on top of it, you could implement the data layer using a Hadoop ecosystem, and you could use various databases like Oracle or Teradata or SQL Server for storing the data in the analytical layer. And after that, on the BI side, you could use Power BI, Tableau, Qlik, MicroStrategy, Cognos, Business Objects, various BI tools exist. Now let's see, we have been talking about, the backend. What else should while building a solution, while building a data visualization, what are the best practices? So we saw those practical examples. Now, first and foremost, we should decide the audience, right? So in the banking example, I was telling about a zonal manager using the dashboard. Then I was talking about, the overall manager is using the dashboard, or a branch manager. So depending on who is using this dashboard, the content will differ, right? So for a top level manager, you just have to give a comparison of how the various zones are performing. Whereas for the branch level manager, you have to give all the detailed names of the customers, who are the top 3 customers, who are the bottom 3 customers, like that. The very detailed level of information has to be provided. So the audience is important. Second, include the context. So if you have seen if you have noticed very carefully, every practical example that I showed, it had the dashboard had a title which says, I am doing so and so analysis. So there is a Senebogen and Grabber analysis, there is asset utilization dashboard. So you could see the titles, you could see labels of the charts and graphs that we went through, and then there are various captions. So that gives you a context as of which date you are analyzing that data. So those titles, labels and all are important. Third is the right type of chart. So we saw bar charts, we saw area charts, we saw kind of heat map on the GIS visualization, we saw pie chart, we saw different types of charts. So whenever you're comparing in absolute numbers, 2 different zones, so that is where you would typically use a line chart. But if you are going to compare, if you are looking at 100% of something, and then it is split into 4 different zones, So that is where we saw that a pie chart or a donut chart will be useful, right? And heat map is showing an intensity of more and more crowded set of people in a particular place. We also saw the bubble chart. You know, there are different types of charts are there, and many times it also depends on the comfort of what will the user be able to interpret very easily. That type of chart should be chosen and used. The fourth point is define a sensible and logical layout. So see, we are used to reading from top to bottom. So that's how we always traverse any content. And then we also go to from left to right. So that is our natural reading order or the flow. So whenever you are designing any dashboards, similar things should be followed. We have to go from top to bottom and left to right in order for people to understand whatever has been represented on a dashboard in a better way. And there should be adequate white space, meaning I can't keep all the information crowded. Even if you see this particular slide, there is a line spacing that I have used. I have used some white spaces, so it is easy for all of us to read the content. And thirdly, the font size, right? So the font size, font color, everything matters for making it useful, logical, and readable. The fifth point is on the colors, right? So aesthetic aspects. Now, if you look at a dashboard which is very, very jazzy, you know, splashed all over with red and, you know, those kind of colors, it's very annoying for people to understand what is happening. Or you have a pale blue black background and you put the font also in a light blue color. There is no readability, right? So colors should be very effective, and whatever are the key points, they have to be emphasized, and wherever there are alerts, you know, the right color should be used. So certain things like that, you know, in terms of choosing the right colors is important. Then the tooltips. So we saw in one of the example, in the GIS example, there is a pop-up that comes that if I have to put everybody's name in that GIS chart with so many people plotted on the map, it would have been really, really cluttered. So to avoid that, what I have done is when I mouse over, this one pops up, and I can look at that particular taxpayer, or I can look at a particular instance. So this tooltip or the pop-up is the important mechanism that needs to be adopted. The seventh point is on the responsiveness. Meaning, if I am defining a dashboard which is only suited for laptops, right, then I'm failing, because I will not be able to render it on a mobile. And when I read it on a mobile, it may become very, very small and tiny. So the technologies, whatever we have been discussing, the BI technologies are all responsive in nature. That means they will auto fit. But then, you know, it is also better to keep in mind what kind of devices you are going to support this dashboard on, and based on that, you know, you could choose the right dashboard size. It is better to avoid scrolling and all of those, because, you know, it is annoying to go down and up to see various data points. When we give this kind of dashboards and visualization to self-service capability, right, you are allowing your principal to look at our data by themselves, right? So that is where you are talking about self-service capability. It is better to keep some filters, you know. So in those examples that we were seeing, there are filters. So if you look at this, you are talking about filters are present in this place. Then there are certain radio buttons, right, which indicates whether it is on or off, you know, that kind of radio buttons should be there. And then there can be hyperlinks also. Like, you know, I have one report in the banking example, there was a report for the manager, and from there I want to go down to details of the customer. I can click on a hyperlink and I can drill through to another place and see the data. So drilling up, drilling down, drilling through, all these should be possible. So that way there should be a lot of interactivity when these kind of dashboards are prepared. These 8 things are about, you know, how the user will experience it from a visual perspective. The 9 and 10 is how is it from a backend perspective. Now, when I click on a data, when I want to query for a certain data, the response time should be excellent. You know, within 1 second, within 2 seconds, the information should come. Otherwise, I will feel bored. I will not even start using this kind of a application. That way, the backend query and all should be optimized to give that kind of an excellent response time. And the last point is on the data security. I mentioned it quite a few times in this discussion. So if there is a branch manager, he should be able to see data about his branch. Can he see data about another branch in the banking context? No, they may not allow that. So the right data has to be viewed by the right users. So there has to be appropriate data security controls incorporated. Now, having said this, these best practices, so being from an academic background, you would want to know more about this. You would want to exactly, have all the details. So that is where I am recommending you to go through this material. So Stephen Few is called as the father of business intelligence. He has written a book which is Information Dashboard Design. Of course, he has written multiple books. This one was very, very good, which talks about, how you can visually, how effectively you can do the communication of the data, right? So that's a book which you should have in your library, or you could or look for the digital version of this book and hold it in your college library as well. But on the other hand, he is also a blogger. So there are a lot of thought leadership articles that are there, which talks about, how you could do effective visualization. So you can go through this blog site as well. So this is a recommended reading material, a follow on from what you're going to do in the next few days. What do we do at LTI, right? So at LTI, we have adopted 4 key strategies to help the companies, to help the organizations break away in this digital era. Now, clearly, this is a digital era, and organizations are operating in certain way. But then, how can we help to transform them, right? So we are actually using a lot of data. We are using artificial intelligence to make those operations in a very, very automated manner, using AI to automate the operations of companies. And as a result, it goes towards a transformation. So that is definitely one of the things that we are consciously doing. Second, we are talking about building data-driven organizations, right? So this entire topic has been about data-driven organizations, be it a manufacturing company, be it a construction company, be it a logistics company, the railways, the income tax department, the postal, the GST. Everybody has a lot of data, and how do I use that data? How do I store that data, and how do I effectively use that data? That is very, very key, and therefore we feel that data is the new age oxygen, and therefore we are working towards we are working with companies that are building that are aiming to become data-driven organizations. Third, digitizing the core. So there is a lot of data which is structured data, which we have been talking again and again, but there is a lot of data points that are hidden in the form of images, in the form of audio files, and so on and so forth, which can actually be core to the business itself. So how do I take that? How do I digitize the core? So that's an important aspect of it, which we are focusing on. And last but not the least is the transformation of the experiences. So, and all the practical examples that I showed, you would have seen how nice those dashboards were, and how neat and pretty they are giving the different KPIs and all. So there's a user experience that gets enhanced through this entire thing. So that is where we are focusing a lot on user experience journeys as well. So all these 4 different key strategies is what LTI is adopting to amplify outcomes for our companies, for our businesses, or our customers. And internally, we have built an ecosystem called as Mosaic, which will allow to ingest data. So the architecture that we talked about. So the Mosaic ecosystem has the capability to ingest data from different types of data sources, It has the ability to build various, data pipes or data processing, and then it also has the ability to build various algorithms with which I can actually process and get meaningful insights and actions. Also, I have the capability of data cataloging, and finally to produce various insights associated with it. There is a business lens where I can zoom in and zoom out on a particular data which is built as part of our Mosaic ecosystem. So throughout these 4 tenets of the key strategies, we have our Mosaic ecosystem, which is helping us help our customers. So with that, I want to conclude. This is the overall agenda that I had laid out on building the theory behind data-driven organizations, the practical examples taking certain industries, and then the back end of how should you go about doing it. So that's the end of the session. I'm ready to take questions now.
On behalf of IIT College of Engineering, I would thank you for your valuable lecture, ma'am. The way you explain the fundamental concepts of data analytics, that is how data is created, stored, accessed, and how the organization works with data and creates an environment for meritorious. It was really interesting to learn and practice, ma'am.
Thank you. Are there any questions, or we can close now?
Yes, ma'am. No, there's a question, ma'am. From participant Anshul, can you tell more about data analytics in future as a scope? And what effect of COVID-19 on data analytics in jobs in next 5 years?
Very nice question. So the first question is, what is the future scope, right? If I have to ask a question back to you, what is the scope of food industry, right? So many hotels are there, so many restaurants are there. Will they die down or will they continue, right? So as long as human beings are there, we have our stomachs to fill. So we will have to eat food, right? So food industry will be there. Only thing is, it may not be in the form of restaurant. Probably it will come in a form of takeaway. So likewise, as long as companies, businesses, as long as the world is there, data will be there. So data analytics will be there. So from a future perspective, it will only become more and more. It has always been in the top 3 initiatives of every company's CIO. It will continue to be there, right? So no doubt about it. The second point is, with respect to the COVID situation, what will happen, right? So COVID is only temporary, right? I mean, across the world, there are a lot of research going on to find the vaccine and all that. But we did not, from a IT perspective, we did not stop our work. We continued to work even at home or remote. So there is no way of, something going behind. So in fact, companies want to find more and more ways of saving money or more and more ways of increasing their revenue. So there is more data analytics that is happening right now. And even after COVID has an answer. I think these kind of data usages or data analytics is there to stay.
There is a question from participant Kadir Vail. Can we use same thing for data or internet utilization like Jio 4G?
Neo 4G. Yes, so data.
Jio 4G, ma'am.
Neo 4G. So data.
Jio, ma'am.
No, there is no, at least I'm not aware what is Jio 4G. Okay, I'll tell you about Neo 4G. Okay, so data which is coming from GIS systems, or if you have the latitude longitude data, it's called as a spatial data, and there are databases which allow you to store that spatial data. So if you're asking about Geo, the answer is, there are GIS databases or most of the databases have the capability to store that spatial data, SPATIAL, spatial data, and you will be able to plot it in map and make some geographical analysis. If you are asking about Neo4j, NEO4j, this is a graph database which is used to store relationships of people, of entities, and documents, all of that. So it's a graph database, and therefore navigating through networks becomes very, very easy with that kind of a graph database. It is highly optimized to query through a network kind of data storage.
Ma'am. Hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, what are the tools required for data visualization Tableau?
I have talked about multiple tools. Tableau is one of the tool, right?
Oh.
All through I spoke about multiple tool names. I was mentioning about MicroStrategy, Power BI. Tableau is one of the tool. Qlik is another. Business Objects, Cognos. Many
No, ma'am. Which tool is best for?
There is no right or wrong answer, right? So all the tools have equal capability, right? So there is no one right answer for choosing a tool. It may depend on the customer's comfort when they start, building their business intelligence. And also, it may sometimes, there is more of some features are slightly better in one tool or the other, but there is nothing like this is the best tool. It always depends on the customer's other, data infrastructure.
For prediction of data, which tool, ma'am, it is best?
For predictive data analytics, so for building predictive, you can do using this Tableau itself, Tableau and Qlik. It has its own capability to build predictive algorithms. But of late, I'm seeing that a lot of people also build that analytics using Python coding, and then that will feed into the data into the visualization tool.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
From participant Thakur, can you explain some science-related visualization usage of the Tableau?
Science-related, you have to only discover. You are in academics.
What
So
kind of open source tools are?
Yeah. So from Google, you will be able to find out some examples on science related. That will be typically used in the academic or in the research area only. It will not be used in IT industry typically.
What kind of open source tools are available to build data warehouse?
Hadoop. Hadoop is the open source ecosystem. So you can have within Hadoop, there is a Hive where you will build all the structured data, and then there is HBase with which you can hold all the unstructured data. So Hive is the storage mechanism, Hive and HBase. And then you can do Spark programming with which you will be able to process the data very, very fast.
Ma'am, the participant wants the answer again, ma'am.
The Hadoop is the mechanism for building a data lake. Within the data lake, if it is structured data, you will use Hive. If it is unstructured data, there will be HBase. So these are all storage mechanisms. And for programming or for processing the data, you will use a Spark programming. SPARK.
Hello.
Okay, ma'am.
I hope you are recording this, right? So if there are further clarifications, the recorded version people can look at.
Okay, ma'am. There's a question from Anshul. As most of the IT companies are not working and we can think there will be more government jobs in coming future in India. Can you tell some government jobs which will come with more scope related to data analysis?
Actually, I have been giving a lot of examples, right? So which government department is not having data? Every department will have data, whether it is police, railways, postal, every department will have data. So banks, yeah, so there will be data analytics jobs everywhere. And the statement that IT companies will not be there is not correct. It is like saying, colleges will not be there.
Participants, do you have any more queries? Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. This was, I hope this was a useful session. One thing what I would request the faculty who are there in this group to bring in to think practically and really raise the level of education for our students. So in future they will be able to do a good job in their in the companies where they go. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear participants, please fill the feedback form that has been posted in the chat box. It will be active only for 15 minutes. I hope today's session would have been extremely informative and valuable. Thanks a bunch to all for being with us today. We'll meet tomorrow morning once again at 10 a.m. for getting wider and deeper knowledge on Tableau. Thanks a million. Have a great day.